I guess I'm watching Oppenheimer trailer right now.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of the trailer for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, coming July 21st, 2023, with Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who led the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb during World War II. This trailer imagery produces a mix of terror and awe, mass destruction seen through the eyes of a scientist obsessed with poetry and religion. I know you Nolan heads are eating this shit up, so let's break down this trailer to explain the history of this complicated and fascinating historical figure, and how this really could be Christopher Nolan's first horror film. I mean, I don't know, I guess Insomnia was kind of scary, but I feel like this is a movie that's gonna leave us with some nightmares. We open on the roar of flames and sparks as we are literally seeing the air catching fire. This is probably the film's depiction of the Trinity test in New Mexico, the world's first successful detonation of an atomic bomb, July 16th, 1945, just a few weeks before similar bombs were dropped over Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Christopher Nolan actually shot this explosion practically on location in New Mexico, but using miniatures, but still, he made something go boom, shot on 65mm IMAX film. This Trinity test was the atomic test eyewitnessed by Oppenheimer himself, and I'm expecting it to be the climax of the film. Oppenheimer reportedly named the test Trinity after the holy sonnets of poet John Donne. Others believe by Oppenheimer's relationship with the psychiatrist Jean Tatlock, who will be played by Florence Pugh in this film. Oh, and by the way, though this trailer doesn't show it, this cast is stacked. Emily Blunt is playing Kitty Oppenheimer, J. Robert's wife. Matt Damon is playing Oppenheimer's boss, General Leslie Groves, who directed the Manhattan Project. Robert Downey Jr. plays Louis Strauss, a founding commissioner of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, a guy who really disliked Oppenheimer, did not like his politics at all. It's actually Robert Downey Jr. Strauss that we heard at the end of the first teaser.
The man who moved the earth.
This cast also includes Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, Jack Quaid as Richard Feynman, and Gary Oldman as President Harry Truman, whose voice we also heard in that teaser.
The force from which the sun draws its power has been loosed.
That was taken directly from Truman's televised address after the bombs were dropped on Japan.
The force from which the sun draws its power has been loosed.
Now, this powerful and beautiful music in this film is being composed by Ludwig Göransson, who worked with Nolan on Tenet. Actually, if you remember, Christopher Nolan referenced Oppenheimer in a scene in Tenet.
You're familiar with the Manhattan Project? As they approached the first atomic test, Oppenheimer became concerned that the detonation might produce a chain reaction, halving the world.
They went ahead anyway and got lucky.
Think of our scientist as her generation's Oppenheimer. She devises a method for inverting the world, but becomes convinced that by destroying us, they're destroying themselves.
So, in a way, Oppenheimer is a historical prequel to Tenet, at least in the mind of Christopher Nolan and the things that keep him up at night. Over shots of Oppenheimer's eye opening, rain, and the Los Alamos lab site, Oppenheimer says,
We imagine a future. And our imaginings horrify us.
the visuals of burning air might actually be what is in Oppenheimer's mind long before the bombs go off. The nightmarish future that only he and other scientists can visualize and are struggling to properly illustrate the scale of to everyone else. Oppenheimer says,
They won't fear it. Until they understand it. And they won't understand it. Until they've used it.
and in the lab we see
I love this thing.
the assembly of what I assume to be the Gadget, the code name for the implosion plutonium bomb that was detonated at Trinity. And to talk briefly about the engineering of this thing, the sphere was made of two hemispheres of a plutonium gallium alloy plated with silver that, from the radiation within, blistered and had to be filed down and then just covered in gold foil. Later cores were plated with nickel. And then this was covered in an aluminum pusher shell and then surrounded by these pentagonal pieces that you see them plugging in here. These are actually conventional explosives that would all detonate and squeeze the plutonium-239 pit to critical mass that would then react with the uranium-235 underneath it to create the process of nuclear fission, in which atoms are split apart, releasing a tremendous amount of energy, though not as much as fusion that would later be the case with hydrogen bombs. And I just love the shot here of Oppenheimer watching this sphere get surrounded by these charges, essentially the radiation sealed up in a tomb. Oppenheimer knowing the next time he will see this radiation will be when it lights up the freaking sky, manifesting the horrors of his nightmares. But then this sphere cross-dissolves into a jar of marbles placed beside a wine glass filled with marbles. Probably a scene from Berkeley where nuclear fission is demonstrated in a classroom setting. Nolan includes more macroscopic imagery of light swirling and dancing, showing us atomic particles interacting with each other, which has a certain beauty to it, but also a certain terror. Now, I'm on camera a lot, so I have to see my face a lot, so you think I would have to put a lot of effort in my skincare routine, but you know what? I really don't, because I use the code skincare trial set. That just Or check out their awesome gift sets featuring all of your favorite geology products. To get started, just click the link in the description for you that ships directly to your door. Then the shot of Oppenheimer followed by photographers. So the Manhattan Project was top secret, obviously, but after the bombs were dropped on Japan, Oppenheimer and other nuclear scientists became famous public figures, their faces on the cover of magazines. Historically, Oppenheimer's most famous quote is a televised speech that he gave in 1965. This was years after he was stripped of his security clearance as a result of his crusade to end the use of nuclear weapons. Oppenheimer was recounting what was running through his mind after witnessing the successful Trinity test in July 1945.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
But back to this footage, Oppenheimer says here,
Theory will take you only so far. I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon.
and we see the pulsing anxiety being experienced by Oppenheimer, who, despite his later revulsion against using atomic and nuclear weaponry, at the time, really, he felt more pressure to be successful. At first, to race to build the bomb before the Nazis could, but then, after Germany was defeated in early 1945, Oppenheimer expressed regret that they weren't able to build the bomb sooner to end that front of the war. And at this point, in summer 1945, he was worried how many lives were being lost every day in the Pacific Theater and felt they needed to finish this bomb to end the war. So really, in this film, Oppenheimer is suffering from twin anxieties: the pressure to finish the job as quickly as possible, but then beyond that, the deeper dread of what he's gonna unleash upon the world. And I like here, notice how Nolan shows that by having Oppenheimer's chair tremble with radiation. Then we see more lights spinning. Nuclear fission has never looked more beautiful. Specifically, it kind of looks like it could be taking place in outer space, because fission is also part of the universal forge that causes stars to burn and emit light. A cosmic ballet of fission and fusion. Oppenheimer ducks from an unexpected explosion during testing. I think this might be one of the instances the Trinity site was accidentally bombed by the US military because it was so close to a bombing range and so few people knew that they were on this mesa doing what they were doing. Various shots of Oppenheimer overseeing the construction and rigging of the detonation tower at the Trinity site, intercut with gorgeous slow motion shots of the fission process. There's also a few shots of Jack Quaid as Richard Feynman. This was a Princeton theoretical physicist recruited for the Manhattan Project who oversaw the uranium enrichment process. And as the Trinity explosion happens, an observer puts on dark sunglasses as he watches. Reportedly, the sky lit up brighter than daytime, colors changing from purple to green and eventually to white, and the base camp reportedly felt as hot as an oven, which is why this guy is sweating so much. The trailer ends on the title. Yeah, the release date appears with the sounds of radiation croaking in through a Geiger counter. It reminds me of how, for the HBO series Chernobyl, the composer made that music for the series by using sound that was recorded from the Chernobyl site in Pripyat. So I am both terrified and excited to see this film in July. Let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss. Follow New Rockstars and
Thank you.